Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Blessings and greetings to you all. As you're aware, we are participating in the WASAC program for the Young Buddhist Association of Malaysia this year. And it's nice to see you have a full program with many teachers giving talks on different aspects of Buddhism from the different traditions. So it's a good opportunity for us all to recollect the Buddha, both as a person, a historical figure, but also in terms of the qualities of the Buddha, what the Buddha symbolizes, and particularly the truth that the Buddha was pointing to through his own life, practice, and teachings. So hopefully for all of you, it's a very happy occasion. And one of the words we use to describe the Buddha is sukhato. We have one who went well, or you could say a modern way of saying it might be the happy one. And it's something that we should bring to mind frequently, I think, through our practice of the Buddhist path. The Buddha was happy, content, at peace. He was a living example of what he taught. And so just remembering the Buddha as the happy one, the peaceful one, the more you do that, the more you recollect and remember the Buddha through your life, it can be a very simple, direct way to calm your mind and bring up a sense of happiness in different situations. Whether you're stressed or you're already happy and peaceful, doesn't matter. But that's one of the ways we can remember the Buddha as somebody who is truly happy. In life, we talk about many kinds of happiness, the happiness of getting what we want, having nice things, being successful, liked by people, getting all kinds of pleasurable experiences. But the kind of happiness the Buddha was experiencing was the happiness of a peaceful, pure mind. But he was happy, at ease in body and mind. So we're celebrating WASAC this year through the practice, listening to Dhamma, keeping precepts, meditating, which I think is a way that the Buddha would have commended and supported if he was still alive. And it's a time we can recollect these qualities of the Buddha. Just chanting the verses of recollection of the Buddha. Iti piso bhagava arahang samma, that verse I think you'll all know. At any time is a very simple way to bring your mind to recollect the Buddha, our teacher. And sometimes as part of our meditation practice, we can also meditate on these qualities, these themes, as a way to both bring up mindfulness, clarity, faith, and understanding of who the Buddha was and why we call ourselves Buddhist, and why we want to follow his teachings. Perhaps the word that you might have heard of most of all from those different qualities of the Buddha from that chant that Buddhists will chant is the word Buddho. Certainly the word I've heard most of and probably recollected mostly in my practice as a monk over the years. Buddho means awake, and we call the Buddha the awakened one. Why do we call the Buddha the awakened one, or what's he awakened from? Isn't he awake already? Aren't we awake already? Well, on the conventional sense, if you're here listening to this talk, you could say you're awake, unless you're falling asleep already. But we are awake only partially. We're not yet awakened to the truth. And what does the Buddha stand for? It's a person who awakened his own mind to the truth through his own efforts, pursuing the truth, wanting to understand the way things are and free himself from suffering and stress through that understanding. And so the way he described that experience of enlightenment that occurred on that full moon day in May, many thousands of years ago, this state is a state of awakening to the truth, waking up from what is not the truth, delusion, or sometimes referred to as a dream. So we are awake at this moment, but because we're still not enlightened, we're still subject to this dream state, the state where our imagination, our moods and thoughts and reactions to the world take over the mind, and we're not fully aware or fully awake. And maybe that's the difference between us and a Buddha or any other enlightened being, an arahant, which is another one of those descriptions of the Buddha. Who was the Buddha? He was an arahant. We say arahang vijacharana sampanno and so on. Arahang means arahant, means enlightened one. Anyone who practices what the Buddha taught and wakens up to the truth will experience this same experience of nibbana, of liberation, the mind free from greed, anger, delusion. Man, woman, whoever, if they follow this path to completion, they can attain this same experience of arahant, full awakening, but awakening because all the causes of the dream state have gone. The mind that's fully awakened to the truth is no longer caught into its own delusions and attachments and wrong views and wrong thinking about life, about the world. So the Buddha we call the Buddho, the awakened one. And so my teachers, Ajahn Chah and his colleagues, contemporaries in the Thai forest tradition, they took this word, Buddho, as a meditation word to be cultivated, developed, to symbolize both the Buddha and then the awakened knowledge of the Buddha. So it's a word that has deep meaning for many, many Buddhists, who are particularly those who have practiced meditation over the years, and some of them have become enlightened or gained the same awakened knowledge of the Buddha using this meditation word as a way to anchor their mind in mindfulness, to wake up to the way things are. So when we use a meditation word such as Buddho, reciting Buddho over and over again, whether sitting or walking or even in other activities, on the one hand, we're linking ourselves to the Buddha as a teacher, as a person, but more deeply, we're linking ourselves to the awakened knowledge, the same kind of awakened knowledge that the Buddha developed. You might call that the Dhamma. And you're probably aware of that famous teaching that the Buddha taught a monk who was getting infatuated with the way the Buddha looked. Just his physical form, the gracefulness of his appearance and his movements and the way he spoke and the way he did things was very attractive to many people because he was pure and free from suffering. But the Buddha encouraged people not to attach to him as a person, to that beauty and that outward appearance. He'd say one who sees the Buddha sees the Dhamma. The real Buddha is the qualities that we're developing, this path of practice that he gave us, what we call the Eightfold Noble Path. That's where you really find the Buddha. So this practice of recollection or reciting the word Buddho, recollecting the Buddha, to develop mindfulness, clear comprehension, and wisdom. This is where we find the real Buddha or the inner Buddha. And this is something that my teachers, Ajahn Chah and the forest tradition in Thailand, have emphasized over and over again, and how to actually put this Buddhist path into practice in your life, whether you're in the forest or in the city, whether you're in the monastery or a lay person, everyone can use this method as a way to awaken themselves to the truth, to bring their mind out of this sort of tendency to always be dreaming, lost in daydreams, or literally falling asleep. As we all know, when we practice meditation, sleepiness is a big obstacle. But when we're not fighting with sleepiness, we're also dealing with just the mind that just is endlessly wandering, proliferating about different things, some pleasant, some unpleasant, endlessly thinking, endlessly reacting with the different emotions to our experience, but not fully awake because we're caught up into that. So I've had it kind of drilled into me since I was first ordained, is that the key to the Buddhist path of awakening, the quality that is, you might say, foremost or utmost that we must develop at all times, is the quality of mindfulness, sati. And using the word Buddho, although there are many other ways to develop mindfulness as well, but using the word Buddho as central to that, the mind that is awake is the mind of Buddho, the mind that knows, the mind that's in the present moment. So for myself, I've learned to become friends with the word Buddho, to see it as a very useful anchor and a thing to return to over the years. You know, like a good friend who you develop a good relationship over the years, I've developed a good relationship with the word Buddho. And I think many, many Buddhists have. They may not yet be fully enlightened or fully awakened, but it's a method that they have. It's something they can turn to pretty much at any time. Often practiced with the practice of mindfulness of breathing, anapanasati, which we also know that the Buddha practiced on the night of his enlightenment and practiced regularly in his life. The practice of reciting Buddho in line with the breath is something you can do at any time. It's always there. It's always an option. So coming to reflect on the life of the Buddha at this time, Wesak or Visakha, it brings us to this very direct message the Buddha gave us. He said, well, as human beings, we've been born into the world and we all want happiness. We want to be safe, secure, peaceful, but we have to develop that and cultivate that through our own efforts. And so the word Buddho symbolizes that. It's the effort to cultivate awareness and knowledge. And this is direct knowledge of the way things are. It's supported by what you might call book knowledge and external sources of knowledge, you know, talks and things from other people. But really it's something, a quality you have to internalize and cultivate internally through developing the path of practice, sila, samadhi, panya, and developing ourselves with this awakened knowledge, and particularly finding methods to develop mindfulness on a regular basis. That teacher I mentioned just now, or the forest tradition, we have Ajahn Chah was my teacher, but there are many, many teachers in the Thai forest tradition who have practiced this. The grandfather of the Thai forest tradition was Ajahn Mun, and this was the meditation technique he used, the word Buddho, learning to recite this regularly in the sitting posture, the standing posture, the walking posture, and even lying down, reciting Buddho to awaken himself. And some of his close disciples have mentioned that he became enlightened, became an arahant, so he fulfilled this path of awakening through his own practice. And he had the ability to recollect his past lives, you know, one of those unusual special knowledges that meditators can develop when they really mature their practice and develop states of samadhi. And he could recollect back to the time of Gautama the Buddha that we refer to as our Buddha, and that he was one of the Kuru people, You possibly have read the Satipatthana Sutta and the Buddha's teachings on the practice of mindfulness, one of the most practical suttas or teachings the Buddha gave on the practice of developing mindfulness. And he says he was one of the guru people, one of the people who heard that teaching, which really boosted his practice, and he could remember subsequent lives practicing mindfulness in different lives until his final life as a monk called Ajahn. He even said he was so inspired by hearing the Dhamma from the Buddha that he actually made a wish, a resolve to become a Buddha. And he followed that resolve for many, many lifetimes, planning, aiming to become a Buddha in a future lifetime. But he said, he told some of his close disciples that he finally abandoned that resolve because he could see it would take so long to become a Buddha, so many lifetimes of suffering. He actually abandoned it and accepted to become what we call a Sāvaka Buddha, an enlightened disciple of a Buddha. And we believe he became an Arahant, an enlightened disciple of the Buddha in his life. But using this word Buddho as his meditation word, and he really stuck to it, and he said he found it so inspiring because it always brought him back to this recollecting the Buddha, both who the Buddha was and then the Dhamma that the Buddha taught. It's like a key or a link to what he was aiming for in his practice and what inspired him. So it's always a word that brought up faith. As we know, having faith, inspiration in the Buddha and his path of practice is essential. So these occasions like this, when we come together to practice, listen to the Dhamma, practice at the time of Wesak is one of those occasions where we tend to come back to our original faith in the Buddha and his teachings, maybe to reinforce it, deepen it, because it's that faith and that confidence that gives us energy to practice. Some people find the meditation word Buddho, even though it has a good meaning and they appreciate that, they find it difficult to use it as a meditation object. It doesn't bring up faith. So sometimes in conjunction with the practice of Buddho as a meditation object, we can also recollect the life of the Buddha and the life of teachers such as Ajahn or Ajahn Chah, or another teacher who used the meditation word Buddho is Ajahn Mahabua. And you may be aware this is the 15th of May today. This is the anniversary of his own enlightenment experience, which you may be able to read about in his teachings. And he personally told me and other monks over the years about how he practiced to enlightenment, and using the word Buddho as what centered his mind and kept him focusing on developing mindfulness over and over again. And it was the 15th of May, I think, in 1950. So this was about 1 year after his teacher Ajahn passed away. He said the passing away of his teacher was a great impetus for him to push on with his practice. His teacher had gone now, so he was both saddened, but also he gained this sense of urgency. Oh, my teacher has gone. I should really push on to understand the very things that my teacher was encouraging me to understand and practice. So this day, the 15th of May, for many of his students, is a day just to remember the fact that the Buddha was enlightened. He had enlightened students such as Ajahn Mun. Ajahn Mun had enlightened students such as Ajahn Mahabua. This path of practice or path of awakening is true. And we can use that as a way to inspire ourselves when we recollect the good practice of the Sangha, the teachers, the Buddha. This is where we can get some faith, some confidence, and the mind brightens, doesn't it? When you recollect these qualities that these teachers have practiced or that the Buddha himself had, what's the effect on your mind is you're brightened. It brightens. And that brightening can dispel darkness, just in the same way as when you're in a room that's dark, you turn a light on, the darkness is dispelled by the light. The light here, though, is the light of internal light of your own mind that is becoming wholesome, and skillful qualities arise when you recollect the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and those qualities. So I would recommend it as a regular practice. Whatever other practices you do in Buddhism, whether it's dana and helping people and putting compassion into action, keeping the precepts, contemplating the teachings, listening to the teachings, a way to really make all those practices effective is to bring the qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha into your heart and recollect them frequently, often. All these practices of recollection are to be done again and again, frequently. So recollecting the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha frequently, even at the very beginning of every meditation session you do, if you're doing a meditation retreat or you're just at home. This is why many people chant, or they learn to bow to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, they pause, they learn to reflect on Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, because it brings up very wholesome, nourishing qualities. Your mind brightens, becomes illuminated when you recollect these qualities. So many people, like when Ajahn taught us to practice walking meditation, he said, stop, pause at the beginning of your walking path, put your hands in Anjali, think of Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, show your respect. Already that clears the mind a little bit from the normal stresses and distractions and moods and emotions that may be coming up from your day. If you do a period of walking meditation, you think of Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha at the beginning. That helps put you in the right frame of mind. Or if you're doing a period of sitting meditation, recollect the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha at the very beginning. It always brings you back to what you're doing, sets your goal, sets your path to awakening. And then you step out, as it were, if you're walking, or you start to practice mindfulness of breathing or recitation of the word Buddho. At least it's giving you that beginning point, putting you in the right direction. And you'll find as you practice the Dhamma, particularly developing the path of awakening, developing the quality of mindfulness and wisdom, that, it's almost like a game. You set your mind, I'm going to practice developing mindfulness, reciting Buddho, recollecting the Buddha, following the breath, whatever the technique is you're using. You set your goal and off you go, but very quickly you get distracted. Maybe after just 30 seconds, you've already forgotten the Buddha, you've forgotten Buddho, and your mind is gone. And that's just teaching you something, isn't it? It's teaching you this is the kind of dream state the imagination takes over, that the Buddha was pointing to, that we have to learn to wake up from. That doesn't happen to the Buddha, to enlightened teachers. They've learned to work through that, work through the delusions and attachments of the mind. Just with the same set of skills and qualities that we are developing, with the same body and mind, human beings just like us, but they had the patience, the faith, that made that effort to actually push through all the imaginations and dreams of the mind that constantly distract us. They didn't give in all the time. They didn't just indulge them, follow them. They learned to use Buddho or the breath or any other meditation object to bring up that mindfulness and that clarity and clear comprehension that helps to push aside all the imaginations of the mind, which is what we get caught into and which what brings us stress. So you're probably all familiar with that teaching of the Buddha, that the one who becomes heedful, becomes mindful, say they start to recite the word Buddho and set aside other concerns in the mind. That experience is like the moon coming out from behind the clouds part, and you can experience the brightness, the radiance of a full moon, say. So it's something, again, on Wesak, the full moon in May, you can just remind yourself of that teacher. If you're outdoors at nighttime on the 26th of May this year, the full moon, you can stand there, watch the moon, and even if you're in a cloudy place, maybe there'll be moments when you just glimpse the moon as the clouds part, and you get that very clear teaching that the Buddha gave, that when the mind is with Buddho, the awakened awareness, what's it like? Well, the Buddha said it's like radiant, like the moon. It's brighter, and brighter implies more peaceful, more happy, more calm. You might assume the mind of a Buddha is like that all the time. It's like a bright, radiant moon all the time, with no blemishes, no asavas, what we call. The knowledge of an enlightened person, a Buddha or an Arahant, is a knowledge of the ending of the asavas, asava kalyano. So no more greed, anger, delusion, no more becoming, no more ignorance. That's our starting point in the practice. Of course, we're all human beings, and we're born into this world with plenty of greed, anger, delusion, ignorance. We have to accept that. Our mind is not yet the mind of the full moon. We may occasionally glimpse that as we start practicing, but we're also working through a lot of cloudy weather. Where I live in Australia, in the mountains, we get lots of cloudy days. So they're just reminding us, I have a lot of clouds still in my mind to deal with, to work through. But the Buddha has given us the path, and that's our good fortune, you might say. And this in itself is a reflection at Wesak, to reflect on how lucky we are, how fortunate we are to have the Buddha and his path, the teachings that we can practice. We still have many good teachers around in the world. The Tripitaka is here, the teachings in texts are here, the places of practice are still here. The teachings are still good. What's left is ourselves, our own efforts. How much effort are we going to put into this? And we have to remember, what was the Buddha teaching? He was teaching the way out of suffering by developing this quality of awakened awareness, the mind of Buddho, the awakened mind. He was teaching us a way to free ourselves from the causes of suffering, to bring the moon out from behind the clouds. And we have that available to us. So I don't know if you're the same as me, but ever since I started practicing Buddhism, that always brought back the question, so how committed am I to do this? So for me, that brought me into the robes to become a Buddhist monk. And I thought, well, there's nothing else I really want to do other than train, both out of respect, gratitude for the Buddha, both out of seeing it as the real way to free a mind, a human mind, from suffering. And then also because I had the opportunity, because the teaching is still here, the path of practice here, and I was fortunate to meet a good teacher like Ajahn Chah. So for me, the question has always been, well, how much am I going to commit to this? And that may be a question you could ask regularly, especially at this time, Wesak. Ask yourself, how much time, effort do I put into my practice as a Buddhist? How much energy, commitment do I give to it? How valuable, how important is the Buddha's path to me in my life? Because what we know is that the opposite is often what happens. Is we're overwhelmed by things that are nothing to do with the Buddha and his teachings. We're overwhelmed by the suffering of life, the distractions of life, the pleasures, the pains of life are often center stage in our experience as human beings. So again, the mind of Buddho is that mind that you're bringing your mind back to the present moment and applying it to the Dhamma, to the path of practice. And that can be on any level. So, it's not that Buddho is simply a meditation object for monks in the forest, although it can be. It can also just be that awakened awareness as you get up in the morning and go about your business, whether you're going to work, you're dealing with your family, you're doing your thing. Where is your mind from moment to moment through your day? What is happening? What is going on? So it's a technique of learning. Awakening also means learning from experience, to come to the truth and see the truth through our experience, waking up to the truth. And that's something you can keep returning to by applying the Dhamma in your daily life, bringing your mind back to the present moment as you're doing many other things. And it's not separate. The mind of Buddho is not something separate from who you are, where you are. You may be leading a busy life, working, or have family commitments, or you may be living on your own. You may be a monk or a nun in a monastery. It doesn't really matter. The important thing is to see that this quality of awakened awareness, mindfulness, clear comprehension, wisdom based on investigating the truth. This is the heart of the mind of Buddho, and we have to apply it anywhere. That monk Ajahn Kalyano, who we're celebrating his Enlightenment Day today, I had the good fortune to meet him, hear his Dhamma, and practice with him many times. And often his teachings were very, very repetitive. Living with him, he would say things like, keep reciting Buddho, keep bringing your mind back to the present moment, whatever you're doing. Don't let your mind get distracted. Don't fall asleep. Keep following the path of practice. Keep the sila, the precepts. Keep developing mindfulness. Keep investigating the Dhamma. And he would say this over and over again. And he would say something as simple as, if your mind is with Buddho, then you're safe. It means greed, anger, delusion, the mental defilements, the confusions, the causes of suffering cannot enter your mind at that moment. So even if you only have one moment of Buddho, one drop of Buddho, at that moment your mind is going to be brighter, more wholesome than at a moment when you have no Buddho, no awareness. So it's one of his constant teachings. He said, keep coming back to Buddho, keep developing this word Buddho, or this awareness based on Buddho over and over again, and then you're on the right path. And you can do that whether you're standing, sitting, walking, lying down. It's a practice of mindfulness in every posture and in every activity. Of course, in some occasions in life, we can't simply recite Buddho over and over again. As you're talking to someone, or maybe involved in some complicated activity, you may not be able to recite Buddho all the time at that time. But it's a way we certainly can come back to establishing mindfulness through our day by coming back to the recitation of Buddho from time to time. And it also makes us familiar with watching our mind. And so if you are doing a more complex activity, such as talking or some job of work, typing or working with a computer, or you're engaging with other people in different ways, even though you may not be reciting Buddho, but you can still be developing that same awareness of body, speech, and mind as you're involved with these different activities. And this is the way I believe the Buddha taught, especially when he taught the guru people, the four foundations of mindfulness. He was encouraging us to be aware of body and mind moment to moment through our day. And this is where we come to see the real Buddha. There's the historical Buddha that we now remember, and we make Buddha images, statues, pictures, which perhaps help to bring up faith and remind us of who the Buddha was. But then there's the internal Buddha, the one that the Buddha pointed to, seeing the Dhamma is seeing the Buddha. And seeing the Dhamma can happen when your mind is with the word Buddho, when it's awake. And what do we notice when the mind is awake, present in the moment, whatever the place, the time, the activity? We start to notice the way things are, don't we? We start to notice maybe, first of all, just karma at work. That our mental actions, our speech, our physical actions have consequences, have results. And this is a central principle to the way the Buddha taught, is that we have to start observing from ourselves what's going on in our life. Be more aware, more observant, have the mind of Buddho, the awakened mind. And that's where you learn, and you start to learn, your thoughts matter, because the way you're thinking, whether it's skillful or unskillful, will affect your health of your mind, your well-being, your peace of mind, or you may be getting caught into stress and unhappiness. That's all originating as mental karma in your mind, and things matter. Your thoughts, your views on things, your attitudes matter, because they already bring in a certain experience to you of pleasure or pain, happiness, unhappiness. And similarly, we become more aware as we start practicing that our speech matters. What we say to other people, what we do physically matters. Our actions matter because of karma. Simple truth that there are causes that lead to results. Good causes, good results. Bad causes, bad results. The Buddha encouraged us to begin our practice at this level, just understanding cause and effect in our own behavior, body, speech, and mind. And then develop the path of awakening and become more observant of ourselves and see, when we get caught into actions or speech that is harmful to ourselves or others, we suffer for that. And that brings us to why we might use the 5 precepts as guidelines, because this is the Buddha encouraging us to be mindful, the mind of Buddho, the awakened mind, of what we do say, to avoid falling into actions that harm others, physically harming creatures. Most usually it will be maybe just insects or small creatures around us, but also includes human beings and bigger animals and human beings as well. To be aware that our actions have consequences. What we say, what we do can be a joy, can be of benefit to others, can help support others, can be an expression of compassion, wisdom. Or we, through our lack of awareness, we can harm others or ourselves through our speech and actions. This is where the Buddha said to waken up to the truth. And maybe the first place you'll be doing that is to waken up to the way things are by seeing what you say, what you do matters. The mind on the inside is much harder to see. It's faster, it's quicker to change, it's quite hard to keep up with it. But on the outside, our external behavior, we can perhaps become more aware more quickly. So for me, as learning to practice meditation and mindfulness, when I first began, the first thing I noticed was how I was relating to other people and the world around me, what I was saying, what I was doing, and realizing that some of the things I did and said could be better. I was causing myself and others stress, suffering. Not being so sensitive to other people, you can easily say or do things that hurt them, sometimes knowingly, sometimes inadvertently. But that maybe for many people is the first area where we start waking up to the truth, is we see, karma is at work in our lives. What we say, what we do matters. How we treat the people around us, the environment around us matters. It has consequences. And so as you're waking up, you're seeing the consequences of actions, or your mind can change from that. You learn little by little maybe, but still you learn that it's better to avoid harming others through our speech, our actions. And that feeds back to awareness of, what's underlying this habit of harming others, saying things that are hurtful, doing things that are selfish or aggressive. Well, it's the mind, the untrained mind, the undeveloped mind, or the mind without Buddho, the mind without awareness, easily gets caught into its moods. And as you practice more awareness, more mindfulness, what do you notice? Well, you notice when there is no mindfulness and we are caught into our moods, suffering emerges. Even just an angry thought is suffering. Even if you never act on it, never speak it out, never act on it, we're suffering every time we grasp and identify with that thought of anger, a thought of greed, jealousy, stubbornness, thoughts of delusion, confusion, worry, fear. All these mental qualities that we call mental kilesa, defilements, the things that defile this mind, darken the mind, are causes for suffering. And every time we go with them, we suffer, whether it's just for a few moments or for many moments or many hours or many days, many lifetimes, repeatedly. The mind that's following these negative qualities suffers. This is where you get your motivation to keep practicing awareness, mindfulness, the mind of Buddho, is because you realize that's the remedy. If I'm suffering, it's because I'm attaching to a certain way of thinking, certain way of relating to the world that is bringing me suffering, and maybe it's causing suffering to others as well. And that may be ongoing, and it may be getting deeper and worse sometimes over periods of time. What can I do about it? Bring up the mind of Buddho. That might even mean reciting Buddho at a time when you realize you're getting caught into some form of negativity, worry, fear, anger, greed. Actually bringing up Buddho literally at that moment to steady yourself, calm yourself down, to pause, press the pause button from the endless loop of thinking in those negative ways. Buddho is that powerful. You're literally bringing up the word Buddho in your mind as you're having a thought, a negative thought, complaining about something or some person in your life. You're sitting there just thinking and thinking, and suddenly you realize what you're doing, and you introduce Buddho, and you move your mind away from that train of negative thought to the present moment. You understand that train of thought has come up, so you don't need to blame yourself for that. In a sense, you can just know it by establishing Buddho. You know it, but you know it for what it is, that it's suffering. If I keep thinking in this way, I keep clinging on, I'm suffering. You bring your mind back to the present moment, you rebalance your mind. Another benefit of practicing developing the mind of Buddho, the awareness, is not only does it help to cut through the mental suffering, the stresses of our mind, but it also helps us to understand it better, what the nature of suffering is. That it's when we cling on with delusion, with lack of understanding, and identify with each feeling, each emotion, each thought as me, as a self. The quality of Buddho is the mind of mindfulness. And the Buddha pointed out that mindfulness, when it's pure, when it's practiced well, for even if only brief periods, has a very impersonal quality. It's just knowing the way things are, but without judging or reacting or giving importance or value to those things that the mind is aware of. Just knowing in a very pure, ordinary way, just knowing this is the way things are. So if you are caught into suffering, you know, oh, I'm suffering, it's like this, but not creating further suffering out of that suffering. Just knowing with the mind of Buddha, it's like this. Anger is like this. Look at it. It's unpleasant. It's stressful. Rather than getting caught up into the story, the soap opera of our own emotion of suffering or happiness, gladness, which also tends to lead to desire, the attachment, the desire and attachment to cling on to that happiness and the pleasant things that are providing it, producing it, or the suffering of anger, worry, fear, not clinging on to that, but just knowing it. The mind of Buddha just knows it. And once we know these mental states as mental states, that sense of separation takes place. The mind can let go of the sense of self that normally forms. So the story is interrupted. We're no longer proliferating and creating a story about that incident, that problem, that thing we want that we haven't got, and so on. Now the mind is just the mind of Buddho, just knowing. And if you become more familiar with that through your practice, you become familiar with the mind that is calm, peaceful, and understanding or seeing the way things are rather than getting deluded by them. So the mind of Buddho is impersonal. It doesn't judge. It just knows. So you may think, oh, I'm starting this Buddhist practice with, I've got so many mental defilements and so many problems, and I'm no good, and I don't have much merit or much parami. You may think that. But at the moment you establish the word Buddho, those thoughts fade, don't they? Now you're just reciting Buddho. You're knowing, oh, it's like this. You don't have to hold on to those thoughts or that view about yourself anymore. At that moment when Buddho is there, you can let it all go. And it's peaceful. Your mind becomes peaceful in the present moment. It doesn't mean to say you become numb or blank to the world. That is not the mind of Buddho. The mind of Buddho is knowing things as they are. So if you are caught into an unskillful state of mind, or you said or done something that you regret, that's caused you suffering, you know that. But at the moment Buddho arises and the moment you establish mindful awareness, you know now at this moment, you're not acting or speaking or thinking in that way. It's arisen, it's passed away. It was a mental state that arose, passed away, and now it's gone. And there's that clarity. If mindfulness is strong enough, if the Buddho is clear, strong, and there persistently for a period of time, you can't help but see the impermanent nature of these different mental states that cause you stress and lead to all kinds of suffering. And this is probably the hard work of the practitioner who is following the Buddha's path. It's that putting effort into establishing mindfulness over and over again through our day, through our life, learning to cut through the dreams, the soap operas, the stories that we constantly build up in our mind and often act out also through speech and action and create more stress through that attachment. It's that effort to cut through it. As I was saying just now, it's not like you become numb to the world and don't know anything or just passive, which is a comment many non-Buddhists or people who've never practiced, even Buddhists who've never practiced much mindfulness meditation, they often have, and they say, well, it looks to me like it just makes everyone unable to think, unable to act, can't do anything. But that's not correct. The mind of Buddho is the opposite. It's creative, it's aware, and it can see what is what. So it can see a thought that is conducive to happiness, helpful, maybe an expression of compassion and kindness or wisdom. And the mind of Buddho knows it doesn't need to drop that or throw that away, or maybe a train of thought or a contemplation that is useful for you. It knows that. On the other hand, it also knows those thoughts and mental states that are suffering and leading to more suffering. So those the mind will want to drop because you can see, oh, it's suffering. So it's, the mind of Buddho is there to allow our wisdom faculty, our intelligence, to operate at its best, unimpeded by bias and attachment, seeing clearly the way things are, what needs to be dropped, what needs to be cultivated. That's the way we grow and mature in our practice, or that's the way we waken to the truth. And you can compare it a little bit like, say, in the morning or whenever you've had a sleep and you're waking up, if you practice meditation regularly or at least a bit, you'll be familiar with that quality of gaining awareness out of the dream state, and the dream state has come out of the state of deep sleep. So as you're waking up, you start to feel your body, feel the air outside, and become aware of your thoughts. And as we know, in the dream state, often the thoughts are kind of don't make much sense, or they're jumbled up, or they're a little bit unusual. And then you gradually gain your true normal awareness. So it's that waking up. And really, the more you practice mindfulness, that's going on all the time, but on different levels. So sometimes literally at very coarse levels, they're coming out of sleep and waking up to the consciousness that is awake, fully awake. Or like somebody who's had some medication and they've been drowsy and ill or in pain, and then they've taken the medication and now the medication is wearing off, so they're coming out of that. Or it could be just on a more subtle level, you're coming out of a train of thought that grabbed your attention for a while, held your attention, and you were stuck there thinking about some issue in your life, your world, but coming out of that and waking up again to, oh, I was just thinking that. It doesn't mean to say those thoughts were good or bad, but now you're able to see them as thoughts, thoughts as thoughts, feelings as feelings. The more you practice, the more you become familiar with this quality of waking up to the truth rather than getting caught into the next story or the next reaction to what you're experiencing. And you can see that, say, when you practice meditation, you'll find you become more able to sustain attention, sustain awareness as you're sitting or walking meditation. And you have different experiences, some pleasant, some unpleasant, but your mind doesn't wobble or waver so much the more you practice mindfulness, the more you retain Buddho. You know what's happening, but you let go. And you can make good choices then. It doesn't mean to say you can't act or respond to things, but you just know, and then you can decide what you do with the experience you're having or what you need to do next. And so often, and particularly in meditation, formal meditation, you don't need to do anything next other than just let go, because you're in the ideal situation for that. And that's something we need to practice at least sometimes in our day. We always say, oh, I can't meditate because I can't watch my breath or recite Buddho while I'm typing or having a meeting with someone. Yeah, of course, there are those times where you can't do that. But there are times or we can make time where we can set aside the other tasks and issues and activities, if only for short periods. And at those times, we can let go of everything and really get familiar with the mind of Buddho, and just reciting Buddho or following the breath, dropping everything. And at first, that brings up fear. Like talking to many meditators, they say, when I practice formal meditation, I quite often get to the point where I'm quite mindful of Buddho or the breath. And then I feel fear coming up because I'm letting go of everything, the normal feelings in my body, the normal thoughts, my memories, the past, the future. It's like there's nothing left. And at first, that's a challenge to who we feel we are and what we think is good and what we want in life. It's like, oh, if I've got nothing, then I'm nobody and life is not good anymore. It will bring up fears and worries. So you have to trust in the Buddha. And that's why Buddho is such a good meditation object, because it comes from the Buddha. It's referring to the Buddha. And you trust in Buddho as a mechanism for allowing you to let go of suffering. And so if you're confronted with yet another form of suffering, the fear of letting go itself, oh, this is worrisome, this is difficult, or I'm unfamiliar with this. Well, trust in the word Buddho, just see what happens. Have the courage, the faith to just push on a bit more. And you might experience a very peaceful state where you're just knowing, but you're letting go. And if you experience that a few times, you gain a lot of courage and even happiness in your life, because things can be let go of. You understand the mechanism of letting go using the mind of Buddho. And you might find you can start to apply this in other areas of your life, new things. That when you have new challenges, new problems, and you're not sure what to do, maybe it's bringing up anxiety for you, some aspect of your life. You're worried about work or a relationship or your health. What do I do? Go to Buddho first. Practice letting go. Practice going to the mind of Buddho so you understand and see the mind better. What is the mind that knows? And then what is the mind that is caught into the defilements, the proliferation? And you start to develop that skill of knowing what you have to let go of, how to let go. And doing it better, you become more skilled at it. And it can maybe let go of things that you didn't know you could let go of. Or let go of things that seemed so much a part of you, you didn't realize they were causing you suffering. Suddenly you realize, you can let go, and it's peaceful. This is what my teacher Ajahn Chah called dying before you die. Even the word death brings out anxiety and fear for many people. But actually the mind of Buddho is dying from your attachments, from your clinging, from your mental defilements, letting them go. And what comes up in the place quite naturally is peace. It's not letting go and then you've got nothing and you're lost. It's letting go and you're really fully there, fully present in the moment, but you're not attaching. And this is the mind that is at its best, at its peak. It has mindfulness, but wisdom is functioning, and you can see what is wholesome, what is not, and you can see the true nature of this body and mind. You can see these things that I'm involved with here. This mind is involved with the physical body, feelings, memories, thoughts. These things are impermanent. What's impermanent can be let go of. What arises must cease. And if you can see the arising and ceasing of your experience, that's true wisdom. That's liberating wisdom. And you do it a little bit, a few times, and you hopefully get better at it. And then you can see, that way of suffering I used to have, now I don't need to suffer. I can just let it go, let it be. I don't need to cling on to everything. I don't need to try and control the world from here, from the center of my mind, trying to make my body be exactly how I want it, in a sense, how I want it to be strong, healthy, look good. But now I know I have to accept, I must let go of it because I can't control it. Or this world around me, my family, my friends, my work colleagues, and the bigger world, the world of pandemics and economics, ups and downs, all of this has to be let go of to be peaceful. But letting go doesn't mean inactive, passive, not involved with anything. It's a change in your attitude based on yourself, based on knowing yourself and knowing the world from your own perspective, but seeing it in a true way. The mind of Buddho sees things as they are. They're impermanent. They arise, they cease. Ultimately, I can't control them or own them. So the practice of awakening to the truth brings you to that point where you realize the peaceful way is actually the way of letting go of attachment, delusion, wrong views. It doesn't mean to say there's nothing left. What's left is awareness. You might say mindfulness and wisdom, but it's peaceful. So today I've talked a little bit about the Buddha from the point of the internal Buddha, bringing your mind to awaken to the truth, training it, developing this path of sila, samadhi, panya, bringing you to see and know the internal Buddha. By seeing the Dhamma, knowing the Dhamma, you can see the Buddha. And I think you might find if as you keep practicing this, you'll get more and more from the Buddhist teachings by putting effort into this. Not always easy. We all have our own challenges, our own attachments, but I would encourage you to keep putting effort into this practice, and you will find it brings you more peace, more happiness. So for the moment, I'll end the talk here, and there may be time for Q&A after.